looks like it's going to be a tech-filled week today with all the tech news and stuff with the E3 and all that. There weren't really any conferences that interested me today, so it's mostly during the weekdays, but it'll be fun this week at least. At least there's still some tech stuff I can do that's not restricted by the laws like all that. I'm actually interested in seeing how those geese are today, or they're still fighting with each other. Yesterday they were in quite a rumble, huh? And I was reading news today about something about the very first guy in Canada to be charged for flying a drone. Like, I know there was that Red Deer person, like the first person that had his drone seized or whatever ever since the interim law on drones came up, but apparently this was the first guy that was charged. I'll talk about that in a bit, so it's kind of interesting. For using VR goggles for the Mavic Pro, people like Mustaine, you were suggesting that I use the Litchi app. I've always heard about that. I didn't understand really why people were using that over, like, say, the regular DJI one, because again, like, I'm still fairly new to all this, because to my knowledge that Litchi app costs money too, am I correct? And for that Gear VR that I have, I'm still thinking like how that would work, because for that to work you have to actually put the phone into the VR headset. So obviously I guess to run the Mavic you need to put like an extra tablet or whatever, and I don't have like an extra screen, so I don't know how that would work, because I'm guessing for that to work you'd normally need the VR headset to have its own dedicated screen. For like drones and safety, that's some interesting statistics you posted, XJ, about how apparently meteorites in comparison, I guess data-wise, is actually more dangerous than drones. So you're wondering like why people here, they don't regulate that instead. They keep people inside their house because they could get hit by a meteorite. I mean, for me so far, there's only been one person on the extreme end saying these drone laws are fantastic, like in Canada, who are willing to actually talk to me about it. And in the quote of this guy, I mean, like according to him again, he says, but drone use is something that Transport Canada can regulate to mitigate the risk, so that's why. Because they can, so they will. That's the only explanation I got so far. But in my opinion still, that's still not a reason to justify stupid interim drone laws that make absolutely no sense. They all seem calm today. Quite a different contrast from yesterday though. So about that drone news, yeah, so I was reading a bunch of these article headlines today, because again, I'm still looking for the updated interim drone laws, or drone laws in general, like for Canada, and this was the thing that popped up. It said, new trial granted for the first person convicted of operating a drone in Calgary. And apparently this was back in January 2016, so that was before my time, like before I got my drone, for example. So I was trying to find like some news to catch up, like, okay, what did this guy do exactly? Like, I was reading at first, apparently he flew from a park. Okay, I guess nothing wrong with that. I guess the reason why he was busted or whatever is he flew near an airplane or something like that, or airport. But it says, like in some places, it says he was seen flying under the flight path of an airport runaway. So if that's accurate, is that true? Like, I don't know, maybe someone else who was more updated on it. Basically, to my knowledge, that means he actually went into the airport and flew his drone there. Like, what? Are you dumb? That's what I would say to the guy. And because of that, he was charged under the criminal code in a very harsh way. It says causes damage to or interferes with the operation of any navigation facility where the damage or interference is likely to endanger the safety of an aircraft in flight. So to put it in perspective, that's the equivalent of, like, say they assume this guy is like purposely flying his drone to crash into the airplane, like as if you're like, you know, some terrorist or something like that. Like that's an extreme way to think about it, but that's how severe it is, basically what he was charged with. So from there, from what I gather, after the trial, they determined, okay, obviously the guy didn't mean to do it like in that extreme way. So basically it fell under, instead, what they determined was Canadian aviation regulations. So it's more about violating that as opposed to being like an extreme criminal in a sense. Basically that line says, no person shall fly a model aircraft or a kite or launch a model rocket or a rocket of a type used in a fireworks display into cloud or a manner that is or is likely to be hazardous to aviation safety. I believe it was like a $500 fine or something like that instead. So then it says he's been granted like a new trial. So I was wondering like, what's that all about? Is he challenging like the drone laws in Canada, kind of like what the guy did in the US? Because that would be interesting, because that would basically change everything as we know it. As I read further, apparently to my understanding, the argument is more about the lawyers saying the judge didn't do a good job in terms of making sure everything was beyond a reasonable doubt before actually convicting the guy. So basically like that, he's saying, nope, I need a new trial now. So it's more about lawyer legal technicality than like, you know, actual debates about whether or not the law itself is right, if that makes sense. For example, maybe it violates someone's privacy, their Canadian rights, or their ability to be able to do what they please in certain situations, whereas other people, they do have that right. Like with the lawyer here, he said he felt like the judge may not have shown a reasonable apprehension of bias. Kind of like saying, I guess, if you're supposed to be a judge and you're supposed to judge things in an impartial way, he's basically saying like, hey, he could have been a guy like, for example, that hates drones, so he was just like, yeah, whatever, I hate drones, I hate tech and this, so whatever, just convict the guy without actually really looking into it and saying, let me really think. Was the guy doing something out of malice, for example, really looking into the facts? So because of that, they went to an appeal court, and apparently, you know, one of the judges, they agreed like, okay, yeah, maybe they overlooked this or whatever, so yeah, I have a new trial. Whether this actually means anything for recreational drone flyers, like with the laws, I don't really know. Like honestly though, from what I read, it just sounds like it's more about, again, legal loopholes and all that. It's kind of like a stereotype where some people say in this case, the only winners are the lawyers in terms of like the hours they can bill. Unless this guy's doing it entirely pro bono or whatever, like that I don't know. But I would assume like most people, people would be paying attention to this because of how the drone laws and stuff are here. Because anything that happens in a court will, you know, ultimately affect everything else in terms of how people perceive the laws and all that. Because in many cases, even with this, like with the argument, it does come down to personal interpretation at this point, or somebody's mood. I thought this was actually a funny comment from that lawyer though. He says, the major problem is while I think the laws with respect to recreational use are quite clear, users themselves might not always be aware of them. I think that's kind of funny because to me anyways, I feel like for a lot of people too, I mean, feel free to like shout out your opinions, but I don't think they're very clear at all. They're too general and broad and they make absolutely no sense. Like he might be basing this before the interim laws came out, but yeah, to me it's still confusing. But the point about people not being aware, I think that probably is like a big thing. Like maybe there are like some people who just don't know like any better. So in that case, like, you know, education is the key. But at the same time, you know, people like me, I can't educate people because I'm grounded because of the way the laws are. Who can guess what that is? Oh, that was a little unfortunate, but good at the same time. There's a gentleman there just talking about, like, to me, like, about nature and stuff and animals, and I showed him my, the clips that I got, you know, before these laws came in place, like, of the beaver, and they were so amazed of all that. And I was thinking, that was just a fantastic opportunity for me if I could fly the drone. Like, for someone like that, like, it was an older gentleman who probably is, like, not into tech by the sounds of it, since he was so amazed by, like, the fact that you could get a shot like that. I could have gave him the drone saying, oh, look around this area and see how it's like. You know, in my opinion, again, those types of educations are needed, like, for the general public. Oh, maybe soon enough, because again, supposed to be within this month, supposed to be ideally, right, for the new laws. And I guess those animals are the funny debate too, because I actually agree with the other ones I read before, like the proposed ones where if the animals is a quote subject to photography, then that should be okay, as long as you're not being like an idiot, like flying really close and putting them in danger in a reckless way, like as if you're FPV racing around them. Does that case mean much overall? I don't know, what do you guys think? To me anyways, so far it just sounds more about legal mumble jumble. Oh my god, dangerous projectile in the air. Alright, see you guys later.